one of the people I spoke to at Netroots Nation was the Secretary of State of the state of Connecticut. And I got to be honest with you, I got pitched her, and I think her name off the top of my head was Denise Morell, I think it was. And, you know, Secretary of State, the state of Connecticut, doesn't quite have that feel of like, this is going to be a dynamic interview. But I got to say, it was really interesting. We will, I believe we'll play it down the road. It'll definitely go on to Ring of Fire. But this was right on the following the news about the one Democratic, there were two Democratic member of the Vote Integrity Commission. You'll recall that Kris Kobach, the Secretary of State of Kansas, set up the Voter Fraud Commission, I guess it was called. Maybe it was called Voter Integrity Commission. And one of the few Democrats, I believe there was two, that was appointed to this to give it some type of bipartisan cover was this guy, Matthew Dunlop. He's the Maine Secretary of State. I guess there was some sense that this guy would be amenable in some way, maybe, to what was going on there. And you probably heard about this. You remember the commission was shut down in January. And it was shut down in January because Dunlop had been basically sequestered and was not allowed to see like secret minutes from the meetings, was not allowed to see the data they had compiled. Because the commission's co-chairs, Mike Pence, who you may have heard of, he is the vice president of the United States, and Kris Kobach had claimed that there was widespread fraudulent voting and it was going to require new onerous voting restrictions. And in fact, when the commission closed down, because Matthew Dunlop had sued to get his hands on this information that they were supposedly working on, this is what presidential spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders had to say at that time, just to give you a notion, because this is now a testable premise. She's going to give us a sense of what they had found, how unfortunate it is that they had to shut this down. Remember, ostensibly, this was about Donald Trump's claim that 3 to 5 million undocumented immigrants had voted in this election, which is why Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, because it was all illegal immigrants voting illegally, despite the fact that they are risking deportation.
Illegally and unstrategically.
Rather unstrategically. Like, I know, let's all go to California and we'll vote in California, right?
They haven't passed their naturalized citizens test. They don't know about the Electoral College.
That's the big problem. They were sophisticated enough to decide, I'm going to set up this whole voting rig thing. They organized the buses, but then they went to California where the votes were not needed. Could
have taken Utah.
They could have taken Utah. They could have taken, there's a multitude of states they could have taken, just like red states. I feel like they could have taken West Virginia. I think it would have upset that. It would.
With 3 million
Alabama?
votes, you can take North Dakota. You can like 4-1. Take
right,
North
exactly.
Dakota.
We're gonna go to Alabama, drop some folks off in North Dakota. Never mind Michigan and Wisconsin. But that was the premise, right? That all these guys, presumably they're guys, right? I mean, maybe they're women. I don't know. Maybe it's. I don't know who they were supposed to be. But they vote. They probably vote in off-year elections too, because they're so desperate to get their say in like a county comptroller's position. We're going to risk deportation for that. But here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders upon the closing of the commission, ostensibly because Secretary of States around the country would not provide the type of information they wanted. even though the states that had things were looking pretty dire, had nothing to do with the fact that they were getting sued to share the information they had collected already.
The president still strongly feels that there was a large amount of voter fraud and attempted to do a thorough review of it, but a lot of the states didn't want to cooperate and participate. We certainly know that there were a large number of incidences reported, but we can't be sure exactly how much because we weren't able to conduct the full review that the president wanted because a number of states did not want to cooperate and refused to participate.
Okay, we certainly know that there was a large number of instances reported. Now, we don't know the totality of that because we didn't get the other information. But from the information that we have, we know that there was a large number of instances reported. Well, it turns out, and this is going to come as a shock to people, and if you are one of those folks who just are a little bit sensitive, maybe it's time for you to turn off your listening device. She was lying. Yeah. Maine Secretary of State Matthew Dunlop, a Democrat who served on President Donald Trump's Voter Fraud Commission, published a trove of documents Friday. He received all those documents through his court case that he said show zero signs of mass voter fraud, declaring that the White House claims about wide-scale fraud are false. I've reviewed the documents made available to me, and they do not contain evidence of widespread voter fraud. The documents are all online now. He said, so Americans can conclude for themselves the evidence to support the statements of Vice Chair Kobach and the White House regarding preliminary findings do not exist. You can see his letter online where he talks about joining the commission out of a sense of duty and in good faith. He said he
That
was
was your first mistake.
Yeah. What? How many times do I got to tell you? I'm the Scorpio. The Scorpion, I guess. I was deeply troubled by my experience on the commission and by the decision to disband it rather than comply with the law. Those concerns paled in comparison to what followed the commission's termination. Both Vice Chair Kobach and the White House made public statements claiming that the commission had uncovered widespread evidence of voter fraud. After months of litigation that should not have been necessary, I can report that statements by Vice Chair Kobach and the White House were, in fact, false. I reviewed the documents made available to me. They don't contain evidence of widespread voter fraud. The sections on evidence of voter fraud are glaringly empty.
I was going to try to come in with a defense of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but it sounds like, was there any reports? Because I can imagine, because she said, certainly we know that there were a large number of incidents reported, right? Which means, we fomented a bunch of people to see, if they see a brown person voting, they'll call in and with a report.
That's possible.
Hey, she said the president feels there was voter fraud. Okay, feelings don't care about your facts.
You're right, and it's wrong for me to yuck on somebody's yum. I mean, if he's feeling it that way, I certainly don't want to in any way invalidate his feelings.
I saw a lot of tweets that were saying they were voter fraud. Maybe that's what she meant.
That's possible.
That's reported.
So the voter fraud commission dies. It was all a pack of lies, continues to be a pack of lies. And I'm sure this will in no way dispel any of these folks from continuing on with this fiction. However, the Kris Kobach story does not end there. So this story came out, I think, just at the end of last week by ProPublica and the Kansas City Star. So apparently, back in 2005 and 6, Kris Kobach traveled around, I guess it was a couple of different states, but I think he went to Valley Park, Missouri. It's one of these localities. And with his help, the town of 7,000 people passed an ordinance in 2006 that punished employers for hiring illegal immigrants and landlords for renting to them. But after 2 years of litigation and nearly $300,000 in expenses, the ordinance was largely gutted. Now it's illegal only to knowingly hire illegal immigrants there, something that was already illegal under federal law. The town's attorney can't recall a single case brought under the ordinance. The former mayor of Valley Park describes Kobach's role as ambulance chasing. He characterized Kobach's attitude as, let's find a town that's got some issues or pretends to have some issues. Let's drum up an immigration problem, and maybe I can advance my political position, my political thinking, and maybe make some money at the same time. Kobach used his work in Valley Park to attract other clients with disastrous effects on these municipalities. The towns ran up hefty legal costs after hiring him to defend similar ordinances. Farmers Branch, Texas wound up owing $7 million in legal bills. Hazleton, Pennsylvania took on debt to pay $1.4 million and eventually had to file for a state bailout. Fremont, Nebraska had to raise property taxes to pay for Kobach's services. The guy at the end of this made $800,000 going around convincing these towns to pass these ordinances and then defending them in court when they were found to be illegal or unconstitutional, either on federal or state grounds. He did this over the course of 13 years. He was paid by towns and advocacy groups. It's not, I mean,
That's not that good of a return.
well, that's
on
his
13
side
years.
gig.
Okay.
That's his side gig.
Nice work if you can get it.
It's nice work if you can get it. And he got to travel and made a name for himself. In June, you'll recall a federal judge handed him a sweeping courtroom defeat, overturning a Kansas law that required proof of citizenship to register to vote. The judge, if you'll recall, ordered him to attend 6 hours of continuing legal education after he repeatedly botched basic courtroom procedure. Another recent Kobach endeavor, the federal commission aimed at combating a voter fraud, which we just spoke of, which he co-chaired, shut down after a bevy of lawsuits challenged it, and it turns out to be completely meaningless. And Kris Kobach, well, he wins the Harold Hill Award for the day. Do we have that clip? No? Oh. Harold Hill, of course, famous, well, I should say not Harold Hill, Henry Hill, right? Harold Hill. Here he is. This is in honor of Kris Kobach, who is running for governor in Kansas in the primary tomorrow. And let's play this for him.
Should say. Now, friends, let me tell you what I mean. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pockets in a table. Pockets that mark the difference between a gentleman and a bum with a capital B, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. And all week long, your River City youth will be frittering away. I say your young men will be frittering away their noontime, supper time, chore time too. Get the ball in the pocket. Never mind getting dandelions pulled or the screen door patched or the beefsteak pounded. Never mind pumping any water till your parents are caught with a sister.
Take that, Kris Kobach.
So apparently Republicans are rather concerned because this they feel that Kris Kobach is now so toxic that if he wins his primary in Kansas, that the governorship of Kansas is in doubt. Could lose that state. And of course, just on cue, Donald Trump is going to encourage the Trumpistas to go vote for him. Kris Kobach, a strong and early supporter of mine, is running for governor of the great state of Kansas. He's a fantastic guy who loves his state and our country. He will be a great governor, has my full and total endorsement. Strong on crime, border, and military. Vote Tuesday.
He's also strong on the popular vote. I love talking to him about that.
Wah, wah, exactly. Now, it's going to be tough. You know when this guy loses, you know why it will be. All the illegal immigrants came out and voted for his opponent. That is.
Well, at least
so
they'll bus
obvious.
him to the right state this time.
Exactly.